Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
So, last time I had an adventure about pickleball, and so Todd and I have been playing pickleball recently. I've been playing for about maybe 3 months now, and I thought I was getting pretty good at it. And Todd and I rolled up to the courts about a week ago, Friday morning, and ended up playing with two retirement-age ladies. Shout out to Rosalind and Avita. And they proceeded to casually hand us our asses.
Nice.
11-0, and it was quite humbling. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
But this
Delightful.
isn't a Battle of the Sexes podcast.
I'm cheering that one on.
We were Bobby Riggs.
And you got Bobby Riggs. This is Cinema Chop Shop. It's a movie podcast where we get together and talk about movies and whatnot. And we're back after our 10th episode. We're having fun with one. I'm your host, Shawn. I've got Joey and Todd, our usual guys here. Allie is our special guest.
Hello.
My lovely wife, Allie. And we have another guest. If you hear a little jingling sound, this is Travisito's good boy, Max. He's here in the shop hanging out, getting pets from all of us. So if you hear noises, that's what that's about. All right, this week, Joey brought this to me coincidentally at the same time that I started watching a YouTube channel called That Aged Great, and it's dedicated to films that have aged poorly over time for one reason or another. And Joey, I can't remember which ones you were talking about back then. It's been several months, but
Somebody mentioned Soul Man, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, like, because for whatever reason, I know it like ruined C. Thomas Howell's career. For those in the audience who don't know, Soul Man's a movie from the 80s in which he basically performs in blackface for the entire movie in an attempt to get like a minority scholarship to Harvard, I think.
Yeah.
And I guess, at its heart, I guess it's trying to like
He's supposed to learn what
explore
it's like to be in the
stereotypes or whatever,
skin
stereotypes or whatever, but oh my God, how cringy. It's so cringy that it killed his career. But at the same time, you don't really hear anything. It's almost like we almost just kind of agreed that, like, let's just pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And
in preparation for this episode, I said, let's kind of leave the low-hanging fruit on the floor, which was, Mickey Rooney from Breakfast at Tiffany's, any of these old 1940s blackface movies or brownface movies,
Or the 80s ones.
But then you get into the 80s, which we're about 40 years, give or take, away, where we've got some problematic films. You mentioned Soul Man, Just One of the Guys, Revenge of the Nerds, Weird Science. They've all got their problems that have aged poorly. 16 Candles being one of them.
even something like
Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh God, that's a whole other category.
Yep.
I was gonna say even things like that, actors were not performing, against their ethnicity, but like Big Trouble in Little China, for instance. Like, is it really any better that you have real Asians playing those horrible
Asian
stereotypical roles?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So that's kind of what we're talking about this week, rounding up some of our personal picks and then discussing what made these age so poorly over time and how our sensibilities have changed over what may have been deemed as a innocuous, innocent comedy back then, or even in recent years, which Todd's isn't that terribly old. At least it doesn't feel old, but it is still kind
97.
of. So we'll get into some of those and probably talk about some others along the way. So yeah, our feature segment, we're going to talk about one that was brought to my attention that I didn't really know about, which seems strange because it came out in 1989, an innocent comedy called Chances Are. This one is directed by Emile Ardolino. I don't know Emile's work, but it stars Sybil Shepherd, Robert Downey Jr., Ryan O'Neal, and Mary Stuart Masterson. After dying in a car accident, Louis Jeffries, who was played by Shooter McGavin, by the way, Louis Jeffries is reincarnated as Alex Finch, Robert Downey Jr. 20 years later, Alex meets Louis' daughter, Miranda, and begins dating her, only to have his past life memories flood back, realizing he is actually her father. So you've got a
Sticky
guy
wicket.
who randomly meets a girl, and then when he goes to her house, he's hit with these flood of memories to realize who he really is. And the way it was kind of set up, it was set up in that very 80s sitcom-y kind of way where he goes up to the great foggy white office in the sky where everybody's waiting in line to get processed in heaven. And
We love to in the 80s present the afterlife as a sort of gauzy bureaucracy.
Yes,
There's,
and it's all
Same thing,
business
that Albert Brooks
transactions.
movie, if you've ever seen that one, Defending My Life. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, but Heaven's depicted very similar.
It has a very Terry Gilliam kind of quality to it. They always seem to have that same thing of like the long line of people patiently waiting for their turn. So he gets impatient and
Because
decides,
he uses his white male privilege, which apparently still exists in heaven,
and so he
to
decides,
cut in the line.
He cuts
yeah.
in line,
cut into line.
but he manages to get the instructions of how to go back before he gets his inoculation to make him forget everything.
Which doesn't really make any sense because
Couldn't God just wave his hand?
He
and
says, "Hey, you
remember?
don't have a body; you're a spirit." And then in the next breath says, "Oh, I got to give you this shot, basically, which will make you like not remember what you."
It's a
Shots work on bodies.
It's a shot
You
of
got that
Jesus
jab.
juice. So yes, he ends up.
Is it at its heart pro-vax movie?
Oh wow!
Or is it
anti?
anti-vax?
Yeah.
Well, he needs the vaccination to be able to.
Yeah, but once
You
he
don't
gets
want
the
that vax in you
vaccination,
because you're gonna forget what's real. You're living in a simulation, man.
They vaxxed him and he started dating his daughter. I mean,
Yeah, but he didn't know. So did it matter at that point?
All right, so plot-wise, spoilers for anybody who wants to watch this movie.
Whoopsies.
so I have a
Incidentally, Back to
question.
the Future has a very similar plot where Marty McFly's mom is trying to bang him.
Yeah. But of course, Marty was fully aware at the time and
Yes,
was like,
right,
"I got to
right.
get out of this
Yeah,
situation. This
exactly.
horn dog's trying to bang me."
Right.
But set in Washington, D.C., I think that Ryan O'Neal works for the Washington Post. There's a really flimsy plot that happens at the beginning with Shooter McGavin when he was still alive. He was trying to get a mafioso convicted in court, and the judge throws out the evidence. But as it turns out, thanks to Ryan O'Neal, gives him a tip. He sees the mafioso giving the judge an envelope full of money. That goes to his grave with him, but we'll come back later on in the film to play a part. Robert Downey Jr., this is before Robert Downey Jr.'s personal issues really set in with arrests.
It's pretty early in his career.
Yeah, relatively so. It wasn't until like the 90s that he started getting arrested and going into rehab and whatnot, so I thought that was kind of interesting. He's a student?
Yes, law student.
He
At
meets
Yale, yeah.
And works in the library.
He meets Mary Stuart Masterson and helps her get out of a book fine by lying for her. Kind of takes a shine to her.
Now, I'm sorry, he must not have been a law student. He was a journalism student because he was getting...
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
The shooter was a lawyer.
So he meets her briefly and then goes about his business. And how did he come in contact with Ryan O'Neal?
He drives down to Washington, D.C., sleeping in his car. He's virtually homeless, and he has met this newspaper magnate at what I guess is the Washington Times or Washington Post. And he says, "Hey, you met me at Yale. I know you don't remember me, but you told me when I graduated to come see you."
He
And
weasels his way in, so he shows gumption.
Yeah. And then Ryan O'Neal's character sees that and kind of vouches for him, even though he doesn't really know him. Ends up taking him home, where he.
That's the part that was kind of unbelievable. It's like, let me give you a lift and come to my house, which isn't even his house.
Yeah.
We find out, and it was set up early.
Yeah, let me bring this strange street urchin to the home of my best friend's widow and goddaughter, basically.
Right, and this while Shooter McGavin was still alive at his wedding, Ryan O'Neal intimates to Shooter that I'm in love with your wife. And he's like, "Of course I know, because she's adorable. How could you not?" So, present day, he's living with Sybil. And
No,
not
he doesn't live there.
He's just in their life.
He's just
in
there
their
all
life.
the time.
and he's been in their life these 20-some years.
It's kind of like an uncle, stepdad type figure to the kid.
And of course, Sybil is still mourning her husband
really unhealthily.
Yes.
For 20 years. And Ryan is just waiting for his opportunity.
Except
such
that
a
he's
problem anyway.
except at the same time he's also resigned himself to the fact that she'll never fall for him, and he's decided it's enough just to
He's at peace
be
with
around her as much as he can.
He's at peace with it. Once Robert Downey Jr. gets in the house, things start falling into place. Like they're looking for corncob holders, and he says, "Oh, it's
Bottom
in the
left drawer."
Bottom left drawer." And then he starts realizing, "Oh shit, I know everything about this house. I know who this is. I'm him. I am him reincarnated. Oh, shit.
And to cope with this, he gets shithouse drunk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you do? I mean,
leave, maybe.
So we have the
Take
problem,
a breather. I don't know.
So we have the problem of Mary Stuart Masterson having the hots unwittingly for her dad. And Robert Downey Jr. wants to get back with his wife, Sybil Shepherd.
who is still attached to his, him,
The memory of
the
him.
memory of him.
So
This is, as the kids say in our Facebook statuses say, it's complicated.
it's complicated.
It is complicated.
And it does rely on some tropes of saying, convincing others you are who you say you are. I am this guy because I know this, this, and this. And finally, eventually, Sybil says, oh, shit, you are. And she's like, I'm down.
Yeah.
Let's fuck. They don't.
Well, yeah, she does lose her nerve at the last minute because she hasn't had sex since she lost her husband. So it's been 20-something years. So now she's a little shy.
Yes. And he does convince Ryan O'Neal of the same. So now everybody's on board except for Mary Stuart Masterson, who still doesn't know the truth. And
Fortunately, they did never reveal it to her.
no, and Robert Downey Jr. was pushing her away, and she was very confused by this.
Yeah.
So to skip to the point after everything that Sean's just described. Now this is about the point where I actually stopped watching because I have
One
technical
thing that they try to
difficulties,
use to make I think one important point for the believability that they're trying to push across is that Sybil Shepherd's character, 23 years, she's going to therapy, she cooks dinner for her dead husband and all this stuff, so she's obsessed with him. That's why she even entertains the idea of sleeping with him. So anyway.
So up to this point, he doesn't know, right? But then
He does, but the daughter doesn't.
the daughter doesn't, and then he gets into a coma somehow, and then he gets inoculated with the shot when he's
Right.
in the liminal space between life and death.
Yeah, just to
Well, here's my
finish it.
question,
Go
though.
ahead.
So according to the synopsis and what you just told me, Sybil Shepherd's character and Ryan O'Neal's character both know who he is, but he doesn't now that he's gotten the shot and doesn't remember.
Correct.
How do they take it?
Okay, so that's
Do they encourage the relationship?
Yes.
So this isn't until the final few scenes of the movie that comes to be. Ryan essentially accepts his fate that I've missed out. This isn't going to happen because here my best friend's back. He's going to have her, and he's like, I'm out. So he goes to leave, and Sybil and Robert Downey Jr. are supposed to have this special night together. Ryan comes back into the picture, and
All hell breaks loose.
well, yeah. And Robert Downey Jr. is like, okay. This is wrong. I
Well,
know.
he hits him, and Sybil's character, when Ryan's character is knocked out, she realizes she has all these emotions about protecting him, and
Yes.
realized actually, oh, this man's been with me for 23 years. I actually love him.
So Robert Downey Jr. says, I'm going to step aside. So he leaves Ryan O'Neal in his bed, Ryan and Robert Downey Jr.'s normal sleeping quarters, leaves in the night. And then we advance into the courtroom where
Sybil sneaks into the bed to sleep with Robert and finds Ryan.
Yes, of course. Very sitcom-y.
Yes.
So we end up back in the courtroom where this judge, the crooked judge, is from the original part of the movie. And Robert Downey Jr. confronts the judge, even though it's not his trial. He's not supposed to be there. He's like, I'm up on a table. I'm pointing at the judge.
Well, his daughter's a paralegal or an assistant of some
Right.
type
She's in
from
the
this.
case. So he's telling the judge, I know you're crooked. I've got the evidence on you. You did this back 20 years ago. And the judge is like, you're in contempt of court. Arrest this man. Robert Downey Jr. streaks out of the courtroom, chased by bailiffs and God knows everybody else. Takes a tumble down the stairs, gets concussed and knocked out. That's when he wakes up in the hospital. The angel who failed to inoculate him at the beginning of the movie gives him his shot and leaves. He comes to, he doesn't remember who he is. Sybil Shepherd says, do you know who I am? And of course, you're so-and-so's mother. And they're like, oh, he doesn't know who he is. Everything's cool. So go fuck our dog.
Yeah, so she and Ryan are just like, all right, you don't know.
I feel
We're
like the problematic part of it for me, other than the fact that the incest angle, the romantic comedy with an incest topping, the fact that makes it problematic for me is that how lighthearted it is.
Yes.
Like if this had been, if Sybil Shepherd's character had struggled with the fact, and then ultimately maybe comes to the conclusion that, hey, he doesn't know who he is, and this reincarnation is blah, blah, blah. But they're just like, oh, yeah. And it almost seems like this weird attempt to keep him around.
Well, it almost is, because earlier we do get a line between the mother and the daughter. You've never liked any of my boyfriends. They can't be dad.
Yep. Ew.
And now she's getting to date her father, which is what her mother always wanted for her, because her father was the best man ever.
Too, though, that they don't have the knowledge that we as the audience have, that the inoculation and all this stuff. So even though he wakes up not remembering it, that doesn't really, like, how do they don't really know any psychological.
We've got so we've got three really major problems with this movie in terms of how it's aged poorly. The number one, hi Max wants to read my notes. You've got the pseudo-incest narrative, which is pretty obvious the biggest problem about the whole thing. The other problem, though, is the violation of informed consent. You've got Robert Downey Jr. having the knowledge in advance of what's going on, and he's pulling the strings and manipulating things against everyone else's knowledge and consent. So that's problem number two. And then problem number three, of course, is that deceptive resolution where they kind of Truman show him. And he becomes...
And the daughter, too.
And so you've got Ryan O'Neal and Sybil Shepherd being the bad guys at the end of the day, because they're the ones who are fully aware of this fucked up scenario, and they're like, we're going to let it go.
I'm just saying, isn't there a childhood vaccination schedule? Is this really the first time that Angel has had a chance to give him this inoculation?
Right.
Just saying.
Well, let's not split.
Yeah.
I think you have to be on the astral plane for it. Or, I don't know. But, okay, so what I'm thinking is that this should have been a really dark psychological thriller.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the whole pseudo-incest thing may have gone down a little bit easier if it were played as kind of fucked up.
If you treat incest like Oedipus or like the Greeks.
Treating it like 16 Candles, is not,
Well, and that's the thing is, this is why I wanted this movie, because it really does speak to the point that it was an innocent comedy back in the day. I think one of you mentioned Roger Ebert's review of it.
He says it's a lighthearted rom-com about reincarnation.
Sure. But when you color it with today's lens, where you've got the modern parallel of like a Trump-Ivanka situation where we've been presented with this, their words, not mine, about the man's attraction to his daughter, and we're slammed with it for so many years in a row that we're supposed to just accept that this is what it is, and they're just different. This movie plays a lot differently because of the shit that we're surrounded by in a modern day setting. So this one did not age very well for me. It's fucked up 100% start to finish, and the fucked upness changes hands. The different characters are responsible for how screwed up this movie is.
This is an interesting case in a case study in a movie that, to use Shawn's words, is fucked up because it's not very fucked up. Because it's a very, if you just watch this in the background, it's a very innocuous, lighthearted rom-com. But then when you start unpeeling it, it's really weird and dark and... and I think that tone.
It's funny you mentioned that, because as I was watching the movie, I was saying this movie would be so much different if it was played as a dark psychological horror, because it does have all of those elements where you're not in control of your own agency.
I'd be very curious to hear from someone who has a belief system deeply rooted in reincarnation, and what does this do in that structure, in that cultural norm, right?
Oh, and that's funny you should mention that, because as I was watching the movie, there's a mention about Shirley MacLaine in that movie, because at the time in the late 80s, Shirley MacLaine went on this whole press junket where she was a believer in reincarnation, and so they even slipped in a timely joke pertinent to the day.
Well, and they kind of anglicize reincarnation, or co-opt it, and the way it's presented is not, I'm sure, the way that anyone with a background.
Oh yeah, because
in
that's
that
very much an Eastern religion kind
Yeah.
of concept, and in this movie, it was presented as being very Judeo-Christian.
Yeah.
Well, and because the basis of that concept is about enlightenment, that you're improving as you go. So the idea that you're really the same.
He
Spirit.
improved. He was going to get his wife and his daughter.
Oh, Stedman.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Hey, Stedman.
This movie's
Shawn.
great. Frankly, it's the best movie I've ever seen.
Alrighty.
All right, so yeah, that's chances are. If you've not seen this, treat yourself to a weird, fucked up movie with a great cast.
It's a great cast. And it's a delightful romp through the whole, like, just the visual of the 80s and just, like,
Oh my god,
feeling wrapped back in that.
so many coral
world.
wallpaper,
So many shoulder pads, so many florals,
gold
so much
tones.
pastel.
Yeah, just a beautiful late '80s movie.
Simpler times when we didn't split hairs about what was and is not
Yeah.
incest.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's split those hairs.
No, I didn't say they shouldn't be split. I'm just saying.
Let's just call it on this one. We'll take our break on intermission, and we'll come back and do our
I need a
individual
shower,
picks.
I think.
Yeah, we're gonna feel nasty after this episode. So we'll be back, but not before we say,
Let's all go to the lobby.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Let's all go to the lobby
and
get ourselves some
aged cheese.
Out of date Twizzlers.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go.
And we're back. We peed in the yard, except for Allie.
It was very cute. They all went to their own quadrant.
We do. We go to our corners.
Well, normally I'm usually on this quadrant, but I didn't know if you were going to walk out. So I walked around the corner in deference to you.
Such
thank
a
you.
gentleman. Speaking of gentlemen, little Max did not pee in the yard, but he did go outside to watch us, which was kind of creepy. All right, we're back, and Joey, we're going to kick off with you with your individual pick. What you got?
I have a gem from 2002. And this movie feels a lot older than 24 years old when you watch it, called Tiptoes, which is, as I mentioned, from 2002, directed by Matthew Bright. This one is so problematic and aged so poorly that it actually ended his career. He never directed another film.
Wow.
And he wasn't a super prolific director before that. He had done a movie which I noticed that, Todd, you kind of liked based on your Letterboxd review, Freeway.
Yeah.
And then there's a direct to video sequel called Freeway 2 as well. I'm not familiar with those exploitation crime.
I've seen
genre
both of
things.
them. Freeways, it's in that kind of natural born killer sort of realm.
Tiptoes is a movie about Steven, played by Matthew McConaughey, who's a hotshot fire cadet trainer who has not told his now pregnant girlfriend, Carol, played by Kate Beckinsale, that he's the only average-sized person in a family of little people. And then his brother, Rolf, played by Gary Oldman, who is playing a little person in this movie, shows up on their doorstep, kind of forces a reckoning. And initially she's kind of shocked and she's concerned, somewhat rightfully, for her baby based on genetics and whatnot. And so it takes her a while to kind of warm up. But then as her relationship with Steven starts spiraling out of control, mostly because Steven is a giant man baby and a fucking terrible douchebag, she starts getting really close with his brother Rolf as their relationship hits the skids. And I'll leave it there as far as the synopsis goes, because unlike a lot of these films, y'all, I'm going to say something. I like this movie. I enjoy this movie, not only because of its like cringe factor, which is admittedly off the charts, but this movie is fascinating. I'm not going to say that it's a good movie. I'm not going to gloss over the problematic aspects of it, but it is fascinating for a lot of different reasons.
Well, you get to see Peter Dinklage as a French revolutionary.
A horny little communist French revolutionary hedonist. He does this French accent in the movie, and one of the things that I actually have this as one of my questions later, but like I always wonder if Peter Dinklage, who, by the way, apparently has defended the casting of Gary Oldman as a little person in the film. I always wondered if halfway through filming he decided, you know what, fuck this movie, and was trolling it with this bad French accent. I don't know.
It's pretty. I would agree.
Also, as Shawn mentioned, stories Peter Dinklage. There's a host of actors, little people actors, who you would recognize from other things. Most notably for me, Bridget Powers, who's been in a lot of things. You'd recognize her. And Michael J. Anderson, who most of our viewers probably, or listeners probably are most familiar with from David Lynch movies. Mm-hmm. He plays one of the Black Lodge spirits in Twin Peaks. And that role in particular was so powerful that I don't trust that motherfucker.
No.
Every time that he's on the screen, I expect him to start talking backwards and like doing some fucked up shit. So, also Patricia Arquette, who wears cornrows in the movie, and that's somehow the least problematic thing about the movie. And David Alan Grier, who plays. And I don't know about y'all, but there's just something inherently creepy about David Alan Grier. Like, there's something inherently kind of.
He plays this predatory celebrity who, for some reason, lives and exists in the little people subculture.
Oh, for some reason, it's because he has a fetish for it.
He does have a fetish. Yeah. Yes, he does get busy with a couple of them.
Well, I mean, where to start with this movie? I mean, obviously, the big thing that makes it problematic is the fact that we have Gary Oldman playing against type as a little person, which people have obviously rightfully I think likened to blackface or yellowface, and we have an actor who clearly
he's on his knees for almost all of his scenes,
walks around on his knees with CGI. The worst scenes are when he's stuffed into the couch, and
yes.
There's like fake little legs sticking out. Like, but
that's like Dorf. Remember the
that's like the Dorf on golf. Yeah.
Oh my god. That didn't age well. Yeah,
no, that came out of the gate not aged well.
Yes, agreed.
Let's talk about Gary Oldman for a second. Gary Oldman, okay, it's problematic casting, yes, but if the optics of it aren't good, it doesn't look right on the screen. But just his acting,
he is so sweet and so kind.
He's good
in this movie,
in the role. He doesn't look the part necessarily, and like the optics on the bad CGI shoes and the stuff.
I tell you what,
awful.
This movie did for me, it made me realize what I already knew. Kate Beckinsale is not a great actress, and when you put her on camera next to him, it becomes even more apparent that she is ill-equipped to be on that stage with him.
Well, think about how much rougher this would have been with anybody else in that role, any other normal-sized person in that role other than Gary Oldman.
Sure.
Right, because Gary Oldman probably went into, I don't know for sure that he's a method actor, but he said, okay, you cast me as a little person, all right, I am going to embody a little person. And
name an actor who's played a wider range of characters well than Gary Oldman. Mm-hmm. I mean,
and this is the second movie that I know of with him and Patricia Arquette.
We talked about one not long ago.
Yeah.
So obviously, but y'all, we come on this podcast and we act like we know what we're talking about, but I'm gonna do something different this time. I don't have any answers, so I'm gonna do my segment as a series of questions, which I will pose to y'all. I have 3 of them. The first one. All right, on the scale of problematic casting, where we have very obvious things like Mickey Rooney in yellowface playing a Japanese character, blackface, that kind of thing, on through cis-het actors playing trans or genderqueer characters, and on up to, I guess, whitewashing, where you have things like roles rewritten, like the
Emma Stone playing an Asian character in that Honolulu movie.
Yeah, or the character from Doctor Strange who was originally Asian, and then they gave it to the whitest woman imaginable in Tilda Swinton, like that kind of thing. So on that spectrum, where does the casting of Gary Oldman as a little person fall? I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer that question. None of y'all are, obviously, but what do you make of that?
I mean, He is an excellent actor, and I understand wanting to have a really strong actor in that role. My question is, was there really not a little person actor that had that range? And the answer is no, because Dinklage was in the movie.
Well, that was what I think. I think if you had redone this movie and had Dinklage as the Rolf character, and then because Dinklage's character,
he's comic relief.
Yeah, the horny French.
It's a waste of his skills.
Yeah. He could have pulled that role off. But another thing you think about is, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second here. Is it really that much different than having an actor who's not a paraplegic or a quadriplegic play a role in a wheelchair? Again, problematic casting aside, he does about as good a job with that role. I'm not saying it's a great movie, but I don't really have a problem with his acting in it.
No, it's hard to have a problem with his acting in any context.
Right. My second question, if this had been a better movie, would that even matter? Like, because even if you take out the problematic casting, this movie is a pile of shit. So, so if this had been a better movie, I think none of that would have mattered. So one of the main problems that I have with this movie, there's two. One is the pacing of it, which I think is explainable because something I'll talk about in my third question. But the writing is awful. And when you have capable actors, Dinklage, Gary Oldman, Patricia Arquette even, delivering these lines, it kind of masks how bad the writing is. But when you have Kate Beckinsale delivering lines like, I wrote a couple down, when Rolf comes to her and explains that he's kind of out of sorts because he found his girlfriend basically having sex with another man or whatever, she says, "Oh, well, you have a right to be cross with her." Who says that? Like, who says what native English speaker says that line? There's also a line later on as she's starting to warm up to the fact of what's going to happen. She says, "Oh." She asks Matthew McConaughey's character, her boyfriend, if he's ever had sex with a little person, and he says, "Nah, just kid stuff." And he goes into it, and she goes, "You had a circle jerk with a bunch of little people? I'd love to see that." How does she fucking deliver that line? With like, I don't know. So my question is, if this had been a better movie, would that have mattered?
I think it could go two ways, because if it had been a better movie, it probably would have had more exposure, which might have caused a broader audience to be able to have a protest.
There's an interesting piece of backstory about this. The original director's cut, which has never been released, but Matthew Bright has said several times that he's tried to get it released, was 150 minutes long. The cut that we see is 90 minutes long. When he was apparently fired from the movie. Like, he wrote it and directed it, but the producers took control, fired him from the movie, and cut it down to 90 minutes in an attempt to make it kind of hammer it into a romantic comedy. So my question is, what do you think is in that extra hour of footage?
I wonder, because my biggest issue with this movie isn't the casting of Gary Oldman. It's this pro-eugenics thing that Matthew McConaughey's character puts out. He has such little people shame for what he is that he hides it from his girl. And then when she becomes pregnant and they have a baby who is going to be a little person, he becomes this complete unhinged asshole who can't deal with the reality of his situation. And I wonder if there's more of that in there. Kate Beckinsale, for the shitty actress that she is, she does come to terms with everything and accepts it and realizes these are great people. They're people. They're not different. They're not mutants. They're just, they have a different look than we do and certain physical challenges. But she comes to terms with it and embraces it. And whereas Matthew McConaughey is just this denier, and it has this pro-eugenics kind of message to it that really bothered me more than anything else after watching the whole film.
I feel like, I'm not sure I agree with that, because I feel like the movie doesn't endorse or condone that message. We're supposed to think that Steven is, he's terrible. He is a man baby. Everything is about him. He can't man up and tell his wife, or his girlfriend, until after she's pregnant, what's going on. And then there's that line where he says, he gets all bent out of shape. And he's like, I need different chromosomes, like right in
Yeah.
front of a doctor who is also a little person. So I don't feel like the movie's endorsing that message. So just because it has a character who is a eugenicist, to use Shawn's term, I don't think the movie endorses that. So I don't have a huge problem with it, but I do think that like maybe that should be hammered out more, and maybe it does in the extra hour.
I mean, those are
footage.
controversies. Depending on how the material gets handled, those are controversies that actually happen in these communities. For example, communities of deaf people, there's controversy about the I forget the name of it.
Cochlear.
Yeah, there are some deaf people who think you're betraying the community if you get one of those.
That it's child abuse to have that done to your child.
That's a good example because I think that there's a movie, The Sound of Heavy Metal. Have y'all seen that?
The Sound of Metal.
The Sound of Metal.
Yeah.
It's great. And it addresses that same, there's a heavy metal drummer
Riz Ahmed, yeah.
who is going deaf, and then he gets the cochlear implant, and they explore that whole thing about how it affects his relationships with other people in the deaf community. But the thing that separates that movie, you know, there's an example of an actor who can hear, obviously, who's playing a character who's losing his hearing. But the difference is that it's a damn good movie. This movie is a pile of shit and doesn't live up to its ability to make the kinds of explorations that it wants to.
Yeah, I think it's trying to make a statement that it's not equipped to make.
It tries to do that,
Yeah, it
and
just
I
can't.
wonder if the hour-long extra footage does that. Because
I
there's a
somehow
scene
think it does not.
where Peter Dinklage's character says that everybody's like, no, don't use this term, use the term little people, and then Dinklage's character is like, no, that's offensive. That's he takes umbrage at that. So it explores like the fact that like it's not like a uniform thing for the whole community. There are individuals within this community, but it just doesn't do enough of it. And also, one thing I hope's in that extra 50 minutes is more development, because I don't buy the fact that she gets that close to Rolf in like almost overnight. So I'm assuming that there's a lot more exploration of that in the thing. And there's some weird time things too, like with his his uncle, played by Matthew Gale, who's also a little person. There's a scene where they're at the convention, and there's a woman played by Bridget Powers, I believe, who says, oh, she's been wanting us to introduce you to her forever, and they get introduced, and then like 2 scenes later, it's seemingly a couple of days later in the editing cut, they live together and they have like a family, which doesn't make any sense at all. So I'm assuming that like huge spaces of time here were.
It just occurred to me, but there's actually a Seinfeld episode where Kramer and his friend, who's a little person named Mickey, are extras on the sitcom, and Mickey is the stand-in for a child character who has started growing. And Kramer says, why don't you just wear lifts? And this becomes a whole thing because Mickey says, it's not done in our community. And Mickey finally succumbs, ends up getting caught, and it costs him a relationship. And so, yes.
There you go.
Anyway, I'm not going to make the point that this is a great movie. I fully understand its problematics with the casting and whatnot, but like y'all, I find it fascinating because I can't think of another film that's this problematic and this bad, but takes itself so seriously. And I just find that, I don't know.
It was problematic out of the gate, too. I mean, I don't think there was a person that in 2003, 2002 that said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, except for the
Except for the producers, they said.
And it's a star-studded cast. It's not like this is some like outlier fringe thing. You got Matthew McConaughey, who I dare say was at the height of his powers around this time, and Patricia Arquette.
Hell, I mean, Beckinsale
Beckinsale
was doing the Underworld movies. I mean, she was hot property at that time. So yeah, it's kind of
not everybody was a woke liberal back then.
All right,
free to be a bigot.
Thank you, Joey, for that in-depth discussion about Tiptoes. I'm fascinated by this movie. I've always been fascinated.
I find it compelling.
Yep. All right, Allie, you're up with a blast from the past.
Yes, I realize that I may be in the minority on this one, but the movie I chose was Tootsie. I had problems with this when I saw it when I was younger. I didn't really have all the knowledge and information to articulate what I thought was wrong with it. But as I rewatching it, I was like, oh yeah, those are the problems. So this movie came out in 1982. It's described as a satirical romantic comedy, directed by Sidney Pollack. It was made from a screenplay by Larry Gelbart and Murray Shizgal. It has Dustin Hoffman, Jessica Lange, Terry Garr, Dabney Coleman, Charles Durning. Again, a great cast. Bill Murray is also in it, who I completely forgot about. Gina Davis. Sean can't stop thinking about her scenes in the dressing room.
I never stop thinking about Gina Davis.
I can't imagine anyone listening doesn't know this film, but basically Dustin Hoffman is playing a very difficult to work with actor who can't get work, and basically he decides that he's just going to dress up as a woman and audition for a woman's role, and he gets it, and he becomes extremely popular in the role. In essence, the film is about how this man is a better woman than all the women in the movie. That's my inherent problem with it. Okay. Right?
I actually didn't think it was that bad. I saw it for the first time a year or two ago. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, this isn't that bad, but that's...
So, and I mean, maybe I'm too feminist, but I don't think so. No, that's what it is. So he becomes a woman, and he goes into this character on this soap opera, and all of the role and all of his character becomes a very strong, independent woman, and basically changes the whole nature of the show, because there's this lecherous doctor, and that just was accepted, and the director, Dabney Coleman, he's a lecher as well, and basically, because she stands up for all of this, all of the other women get empowered to stand up to these men as well.
They just needed a man to
show them how to be a woman.
Kind of like a white savior sort of thing.
It is exactly that.
It's very much a white savior, and as I mentioned earlier, I think it's in the same realm as Soul Man, because it's someone changing who they are to a male to female in order to game the system, in order to advance. And that's I just find that to be problematic. Now, the reason I think this didn't age well in this day and age particular is because we have so many trans people that are getting targeted for being their true authentic self. And I think that's because the people who don't understand trans people think that this is what being trans is.
It's dress up.
Dress up.
Living a lie.
And that's what he's doing here. And it's entertaining. And I know that I'm in the minority on this because there's a musical that just on Broadway now of Tootsie. Now they're claiming they've adapted the screenplay to instead of the women becoming better because they've been exposed to his female character, he learns more about himself from the influence of the strong, independent women around him. So I guess that's a slightly more palatable version, that being deceptive and fooling everyone is better. Right. So it's just got so many problems on so many levels for me. But the aging well part for me in particular is really I think that it's reinforcing stereotypes of the trans community that are not true.
I remember seeing this movie and this is going to be, I don't know why I have this particular memory, but like in Entertainment Weekly or something this would have been 20 years ago. And there was a list of like feminist icon movies, and one of them was 9 to 5, where Dolly Parton plays, and then Tootsie was on this as well. And so I haven't seen it since probably the 90s. So your take is fresher than mine. My question is this: like, I think you mentioned Soul Man. Soul Man, if memory serves, attempts to be or thinks that it is being an anti-racist movie, but ends up just being so utterly tone deaf in its attempt to do that it's like laughable. And I wonder if that's kind of like the same thing that's happening here.
I think that it is, because I think that at the end of the film, a number of the women in the film get, especially Jessica Lange's character, get empowered, get more independent because of the female role that this person was playing. So they're being influenced by a strong female independent person to become a stronger, more independent female. But at the heart of that, it's a man doing.
Yep.
And that's
I don't think it's as tone deaf as Soul Man, but I think that's
Not
a
as,
good point, though, is that because I think the writers, directors recognizes the problems women face, but the vehicle for their salvation is the man.
Every mansplainer will tell you that he's correct.
Yes, they will.
And that's the core of the movie.
Yeah.
Mansplaining,
So I mean,
yes.
it's funny. It's some great acting. Jessica Lange got an Oscar for it. It got a number of Golden Globes. Like I said, it had as a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. Ebert gave it 4 out of 4. It's a well loved film, but I, for one, don't ever remember having good feelings about it. I remember seeing it and just being, I don't understand why people like this. It's wrong and stupid. The other layer,
The music.
you know, well, you could talk about that in a minute. The other layer for me is also the
remember that.
pretentious theater people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
So serious.
So that's the other part. Their art is so much more important than the reality of working and performing. But that's a whole nother podcast.
All right.
Sean does have a great deal of issue with the soundtrack.
The music plays like a sitcom.
Oh, so schmaltzy. Well, everything, it's framed as a sitcom. It's just longer.
All right. Thank
So-
you, Allie, for that. I agree. I think that the man being the great explainer is the problem with this movie. It's not doesn't have to do with cross-dressing or any of that nature for me. I think the part that's aged poorly is the fact that it took a man to bring down the walls that women couldn't do. And yeah,
There you go. Screw Tootsie.
I still like the movie though. It's still
I mean,
Again, it's a well-done movie.
exceptionally made.
You know?
It hits on so many notes. It's
It
like
does,
the
and has
pacing
great
is so
performances.
good.
It's just, yeah.
All right, Todd, you've got a good one.
I haven't. This one I found kind of interesting when I rewatched it with kind of fresh eyes after many years. Chasing Amy, directed by Kevin Smith. And this movie came out in 1997, which the mid to late 90s was sort of Kevin Smith's playground with Clerks and this movie and some others that he did. There was about a 10-year period where Kevin Smith was kind of a it director on the indie scene. Also, this was relatively successful financially, by the way. Made for $250,000, made $12 million at the box office, so a relative, good return there. Now, stars Ben Affleck, who's a buddy of Kevin Smith. This is in the post Good Will Hunting period. Just after it, though, I think. Mm-hmm. It's playing Holden, who is a comic book artist, and so this is kind of set in sort of the middle realm of comic book artistry, where he and his friend, played by Jason Lee, the character Banky, are work on this comic called Blunt Man, which is based off of recurring Kevin Smith characters, Silent Bob and Jay and Silent Bob.
Chronic, yep.
So this is part of that world that he set up, starting with Clerks. But in any case, they're not famous people by any means, but they do well enough to where they have a following, and they go to comic book shows and do signings. And at the beginning of the film, there's this pretty funny scene where Jason Lee's character is the guy that I don't know the official name, but he kind of adds depth to the pictures by sort of going over the lines.
He's the inker.
The inker, yeah.
You're a tracer.
And they call him a tracer, and they kind of, So there's a lot of inside humor here because Kevin Smith, of course, is a big comic book guy. Okay, so the premise is Holden meets this girl, and her name is actually not Amy. Her name's Alyssa. I'll explain the Amy part shortly, but who he immediately has this connection with, and then comes to find out that she is a lesbian. He kind of is going to drop it and move on, but she actually is like, hey, let's be friends, basically. And so they end up hanging out. He falls in love with her. He makes a confession to her that he's in love with her, and then she reciprocates. They start dating. He thinks that she's just been a pure 100% lesbian, and finds out about some dalliances that include threesomes with guys that she's had before and experimentation that she's done. He's a good Catholic boy with a conservative upbringing background, can't deal with it. Meanwhile, Banky, his friend, is chock full of all these colorful 90s era gay jokes that he's unleashing left and right. has a problem with the relationship. Holden can't get over this problem that he has. They break up, and then that's... I won't go into what happens at the end of the movie, although I do think that there's something to be said for the ending. I'll probably point that out later, but in any case, that's kind of the setup of the film. This movie is actually one, I'm not the first person to kind of point out the central problem of this, which we'll get out of the way from the beginning, which is that, so this lesbian comes along, and the white guy converts her. So the problem of the white guy conversion, sort of similar to the white savior problem. And there are some critics who have talked about that. One critic, early critic, pointed out something that I think is a potential defense for it, watching it with fresh eyes, which is that it's a depiction of a fluid character we find out by the end of the movie, which is that she's not gay. And one of the problems with Holden is that he doesn't mind that she's been gay, but he's like into these categories.
He's very binary.
Binary, right?
Well, and he wants to be the one man that was able to convert her.
The magic penis.
He wants to be yes, exactly. And he likes the fact that he was the one that convert her. But we also see they have a discussion when they're just in their friendship stage where they talk about fucking and the word fucking and how, well, you didn't, fucking means penetration with a penis. And she tries to say no fucking, and her explanation for what fucking is what she is, which is this kind of not specific or grounded but fluid sort of thing about what defines it. So I actually think there's a defense of that. The problem with the movie, I think, rewatching it, is less that aspect of it and more so. I enjoyed the movie much like Joey enjoyed his, and I think it's actually a good movie overall. But it's also a time capsule in that there's the problematic things are below the surface, such as the Jason Lee character is a big asshole who makes their jokes about being gay, the word fag's thrown around all the time. Now it's not necessarily that Kevin Smith is portraying him as like that this is good that he's doing that, but even the Holden character makes jokes, makes little quips about, being gay. Like there's one character too. This is an interesting, a secondary character that's problematic, which is their friend that pops up at the very beginning of the movie, who is a black comic book artist, and his name was what was his name?
Some revolutionary.
Yeah, but so the comic book that I can't find his name right now, but I can explain it well enough. This character is problematic, but not what it seems like on the surface. This character, they're making fun of this stereotype of the militant black guy, and he actually has a comic book that he's promoting called White Hating Coon. And he's pretending to be, as a character almost, author to promote his comic book to be that sort of militant black man. And they are, and the problem with that character, and this is one of the problems that's below the surface, is that when we find out that it's actually sort of that they're making fun of that stereotype, he slips into a very stereotypical effeminate gay man role.
Yeah.
That's who he really is.
He's living a double life.
Yes, he's living a double life. But then the character that he embodies is very stereotypical, effeminate, limp-wristed gay man. So their critique of the angry black man stereotype devolves into a very common 90s trope of, kind of the effeminate gay guy, even amongst people who are allies, so to speak. I say the movie's a time capsule. The movie was contemporary. The subject matter was contemporary when it was made in 97. And so when you look back on it, you see these attitudes reflected that we would not tolerate today. And to be fair, the movie doesn't necessarily tolerate them either completely, but there are slips in there. The Jason Lee character is critiqued, I think, through the lens of some of the gay jokes and comments that he makes, but yet even through those critiques, there are still other comments, gay jokes and such made that are not part of that critique, bubble. And there's still stereotypes that pop in even when critiquing other stereotypes. And so that's part of the problem. The other problem is I do think that it's not entirely fair to say that this is just the straight white guy converting the gay girl, but it's kind of that though still, because we don't find out about this fluidity stuff until the very end of the movie. She's presented initially as very much just she's straight, or I'm sorry, she's just gay, and that's it, cut and dry. And so then we get into this other kind of problematic stereotype, similar to the effeminate gay guy stereotype of the slutty lesbian girl, you know. She can't just have a normal sexual past like everybody else. She had to experiment and have threesomes and with dumb idiots and stuff like that in order, you know, to find her, to quote unquote find herself and figure out that she was, you know, actually gay or whatever. And there's that kind of stereotype too of the sort of hedonistic lifestyle of people who are, you know, not straight, quote unquote. So in any case, I think the movie actually is a good movie. I enjoyed it. The dialogue's great a lot of the time. I think the ending's really good because it doesn't fall into the cliche of having the couple get back together at the end. I won't describe it too much, but I think it actually has a pretty end that resonates pretty well. But there are just some stereotypes of the time that even as Kevin Smith is trying to critique problematic things that he sees, he nevertheless can't get completely out of that himself.
Yep. I agree. It's one of his better written movies. It's so dialogue driven, but he kind of does fall prey to some of the traps.
Yep.
Because as a straight white man writing all of that dialogue, he's going to fuck up.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's a minefield.
Yep.
I don't want to give him a pass for anything, but at the same time, there are things that he was never going to get right.
No, he's trying hard, and yeah, exactly. He's writing characters. He's trying to, you know, be the empath, writing characters from certain perspectives, and he does it well at times, but then he can't completely.
Allie's got a look on
that.
her face.
Yep.
Well, if you wanted to do it well, bring in a lesbian to help write.
There you go.
Right, there you
okay,
go.
perfect. Yep.
I agree with what Allie said. I mean, you consult people who have lived experience is probably the better thing. But at the same time, I feel like the last thing I want to do here is come off like some kind of like, you know, Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn shit or whatever. Like, you can't do comedy anymore. Whatever. That's not where I'm coming from. But I do think that, like, it's a mistake. It's a trap to, like, expect every movie or every book or every narrative to be the end-all, be-all,
true,
you know, statement on the topic. And, like, this is one I feel like was done, and I don't know Kevin Smith or whatever, but, like, I feel like it was done in good faith.
His heart was in the right place, for sure.
You know what I mean? It was,
and he also can't completely get out of the time in which he lives.
Exactly. And
which is why I say it's a time capsule.
It was kind of, I remember seeing this came out in the mid to late 90s.
97,
yeah.
So I remember seeing this around the same time, and it was kind of a new, as far as mainstream narratives go, it was kind of a new take on this idea, because it hints at the idea that we've come to accept now, which is like sexuality exists on a spectrum,
right.
And it pays at least some like lip service to that, and even if it does get tone deaf, you know, 30 some odd years later or whatever.
Yeah,
I feel like it was done in good faith as an attempt to kind of explore those things, and for this one, for me, perhaps more so than any of the other movies, except for maybe Tootsie, which I also think was probably an attempt to make a feminist point, just gets it wrong on some levels. But I don't know if that's a fatal flaw.
No, like I said, I like the movie. I don't think I don't think it's one of those films we just dismiss and throw into the trash bin of cinematic history like some others. But you know, we can recognize the problems from our hindsight perch.
Well, if you want to talk about movies that aren't on a perch,
yeah,
they tried to be on a perch. I'm going to talk about The Hotel New Hampshire from 1984. It's directed by Tony Richardson. Good director. Based on John Irving's novel, the film follows the eccentric Barry family as they navigate life in various hotels across New England and Vienna, dealing with tragic accidents, radical terrorists, farting dogs, quite frankly, and intense internal attractions. Well, they had a family dog that had flatulence, and
That's just called a dog.
they just had to kill the dog.
Oh, that's not.
No, they
good.
just needed to kill the dog. It stars Jodie Foster, Rob Lowe, Beau Bridges, Nastasia Kinski, and Wilford Brimley.
Nice. Yep. The Beatus.
This
Did its
was
mustache get an extra credit?
This was the Wes Anderson movie before Wes Anderson existed. You should watch this movie and you will see the DNA of Wes Anderson in it. It is erudite. It wants to be highbrow. It wants to make a statement. It wants to be not forward thinking, but differently thinking. And it just does not do it. The problem with this movie, you have Rob Lowe and Jodie Foster, her brother and sister, and they're very close. Very close. They express
Uncomfortably close?
They express their
Chances
love.
are
They
close.
they express their love for one another, but they know that they can't do anything about it.
Oh.
Oh, Seth Green's in this movie, by the way, as a child actor. It's kind of interesting. Jodie Foster's character is raped by Matthew Modine and a bunch of other high school boys. Matthew Modine shows up later in the film in a dual role as a revolutionary in Vienna with a little pencil mustache.
I'm offended already.
Jodie Foster, because she was raped, Rob Lowe wants to do something to make it right. And obviously, what one does, you want to fuck your sister.
Sure.
That's what happens in this movie. That is the build up. The entire build up to this movie is that they're gonna fuck, and they do, and it's great. They fuck for 13 hours.
Wow.
There is
How Lannister of them.
yeah, exactly.
Is there a
It's-
director's cut with the full 13 hours?
It's very Lannister. There's like a clock sequence where they show the ticking of the clock going around, and they finish the first few go rounds, and Rob Lowe's like, "That's great. That's what I've been waiting for." And she said, "Oh, you're not done. We're gonna. This is your one shot. This is what you've been waiting for. You're gonna do it right." So they go for freaking 13 hours.
It sounds like this movie makes good on the promise that chances are made.
Yeah.
And the incest in and of itself is problematic. No shit. But the fact that this was done as Rob Lowe's heroic way to help her process her rape trauma
Oh my god.
becomes even more problematic.
The best thing that you can do to help someone through sexual trauma is more sexual trauma.
And the other thing is that this is kind of like a known thing from the family because they have a brother who's gay, and that's the least problematic part of this whole movie. And like they all kind of know that the two of them have the hots for each other, and the whole family kind of endorses this thing. It's all right. Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, and that's a problem, and it doesn't age well. The fact that it was presented as transgressive art at the time. You know, this early '80s. Look at us, we're being so edgy, and.
Fuck your middle class sensibilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Most pieces of art that are self-consciously self-described as transgressive is just edgelord bullshit.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that this was kind of presented as being this trauma recovery, and it's just so bad. It's so not, and I don't know what else to say about this movie. It is on its face just a problem. And it was presented in such a lighthearted fashion. There are other things in the movie that I'm completely glossing over because I just wanted to cut right to the core of it.
This one seems like one that it's not so much that it didn't age well. I would imagine that like some of these, like Tootsie, for instance, probably would have come across to many people in the audience, not everybody, as sort of forward-thinking or even progressive at the time, even if it's, regressive now. This strikes me as the kind of thing that, like, even at the time, people were like, "Ew."
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering is that were they trying to be so edgy and so out there? I'm not even mentioning the fact that Wallace Shawn's in this movie. He is a hotelier, and his hotel in Vienna that Beau Bridges eventually takes over. He has a assistant played by Natasha Kinski who wears a bear costume. I forgot to mention that. Yes, she wears a bear costume. They call her a bear. She thinks she is a bear. And so there's a big discovery arc of her coming out of her bear costume and acting human. There's a whole lot of issues with this movie. And it wants to be something way more than it is. And I mentioned the Wes Anderson thing because when you watch this, you're like, okay, I could see how this would be all placed into a Wes Anderson quirky kind of thing. Especially since Wes Anderson has flirted with the whole incest thing with the Royal Tenenbaums. Even though they weren't blood kin, you still had that that whole plot line with Gwyneth Paltrow, and so yeah, this movie, it's just on its surface, just blatant, just let's brother and sister fuck, folks. Come on, let them do it.
I feel like we should rank these 5 movies on most to least problematic. I think. What's Tyler your movie again?
It's the Hotel New Hampshire.
Yeah, I think that's number 1.
I think that's number 1.
Brazen.
You're number 2.
Really?
Yeah.
You think Tiptoes is number 2?
Well, okay. Let me give the caveat that I've seen none of these movies.
Okay.
You think Chances
So,
Are?
Except
You
for
haven't seen
Chances
Chasing
Are.
Amy?
I don't
feel
think
like
I have.
I feel like my movie, the point that I made about Tootsie, I feel like its heart's in the right place. Like it kind of wants to be.
Yeah,
it wants to present itself as representing little people and
Yeah, I say Hotel New Hampshire.
easily number 1.
Chances Are.
2, yeah.
I think Joey's is next with Tiptoes, and I think that
I think it goes Tootsie, then Chasing Amy.
you do. I was going to say Chasing Amy, then Tootsie.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that because that whole gender fluidity part of it, I think that part, from as I understand from what I've
Ages
heard
better.
people, I think that ages better, and I think that it wasn't presented. It seems like it was presented in a fairly authentic way.
Yeah.
So I think
Kevin
there's
Smith.
No,
part
I
has
get
that
you.
in the
I get you. Yeah. Its heart was in its right place.
And he probably knew people in his, even if he couldn't fully,
I mean, I know 4 or 5 women right now who would have sworn that they were lifelong lesbians in the 90s, and now they're like soccer moms.
Yeah.
Or soccer grandmas, I guess now as we're getting
For sure.
old.
There we go.
So, I mean,
Yep.
it does happen.
Yep.
All right, we're going super long, so we'll go ahead and pinch it off right there.
That was problematic.
Those movies aged poorly.
agreed.
All right, thank
Pinch
you.
it off there, Shawn.
Thank you, Allie, for being on the show. I
You're
appreciate your contribution and your feminist eye and
You
ear.
bring a sorely needed presence to
Yes.
this podcast. In your
The male gaze is
appearances.
too strong in this
Oh,
podcast.
it's dripping in here with male gaze.
All
We're going to go work out after this, right?
Yeah, totally. We'll pump some iron. We're going to come back in a couple of weeks. I think we decided we're going to do summer camp movies, summer camping, Winnebago style.
Yes, focusing on the Winnebago.
Like a road trip
Or
in
the
a camper kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. Please rate, review, subscribe, and share the podcast with other people. We're Cinema Chop Shop on the social media. We're Cinema Chop Shop Podcast on YouTube and Blue Sky. You look like you want to say something. Okay.
Tell your friends you love them.
Well, yeah, tell your friends you love them.
Love you
Love your
guys.
neighbors and do kind things for total strangers. Just be nice. We need it a lot. And Max, you got anything you want to say? Nope. Maybe Travis Cito will be in here next episode. We'll see. And in the meantime, please remember to watch, chop, retrofit.